Well, good morning, everyone. And today we have a very special guest. We'd like to welcome Diane Shober, the Queen of Tourism in Wyoming over the last few years. And so it's summertime in Wyoming. We got people all over. Um, so first of all, just talk about what your role in Wyoming tourism has been, and I think you're getting ready for sayonara for
Yeah,
and
not for a while, but
not
soon.
for a
Yeah.
while, but
Yeah.
getting soon. So tell us about how the Department of Tourism is set up and kind of what you do there and what it
Okay.
does for us.
Okay. Thank you. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. This is my favorite subject to talk about tourism and what it does for the state of Wyoming and communities around our state. The Wyoming Office of Tourism is an instrument of state government. We're a state agency. We're part of the executive branch. And the role and purpose of the Wyoming Office of Tourism is to promote our assets, both the natural and man-made, to drive a visitor economy. And by a visitor economy, non-residents coming to Wyoming to spend their leisure time here vacationing, predominantly in the great outdoors. That's the ideal part of our product is we have these beautiful national icons, gorgeous state parks, wide open spaces, and really the last bastion of the West. And so we hang our hat on that, and it's been serving the state well long before I came along, and will serve the state well long after I'm gone. The visitor economy is an export economy by sheer definition of non-residents coming here and buying Wyoming goods and services from Wyoming businesses across the state and then returning home. We're contributing tax dollars, supporting jobs, the profitability of businesses all across the state. And these are dollars that are not tax dollars that are not Wyoming folks generating them, although Wyoming folks do travel, certainly, and enjoy the great state. The majority of that revenue is generated by non-resident travel. And as I said, it supports local governments, state governments, but also the viability of communities. And our role is to create, the role of the Wyoming Office of Tourism is to create compelling campaigns and stories that inspire consumers when they're looking at all of the options that they have for their discretionary dollars and how they want to spend their leisure dollars, that we want them to have Wyoming top of mind in that consideration set. And certainly, while we all know that this is a beautiful product, this landscape is very competitive. And so it takes a lot of precision. The decisions are based on data and facts and other things that guide that strategic decision for how we lay out not only our marketing plan, but public relations, how we develop content. And in recent years, Dale, you I know would remember this too, is when we started through the COVID years, we were able to get some CARES funds and excuse me, enabled some communities to do some things that they normally maybe would not have done that they could do outside of their scope. And so we were fortunate enough within an appropriation and spending authority through the Wyoming legislature to get money to now we have a destination development program that all of the local lodging tax boards across the state are eligible to apply for funds to help create product or itineraries or to do things that they might not be doing within their own budget that fit within their strategic plan that can help grow the visitor economy for that local community. And so, in a nutshell, that's what we do. We're storytellers, we're promoters. We get to market and sell the very best of Wyoming for the rest of the world to see. And by us doing so and working with partners all across the state, local lodging tax boards and businesses, Wyoming benefits from a very robust visitor economy.
So this will be watched by um, chambers and economic development groups all across the state. And one of the things that popped up the other day that we were discussing on a call with a lot of other chambers of commerce was that um, you know, how do small chambers explain to people in their community what tourism means? Because we see Cheyenne with Frontier Days and at the intersection of two major highways. We see Jackson with all that it has to offer. But I think we don't think about a lot of times what happens in these smaller communities and what kind of shape they'd be in without tourism. So, what percentage of the economy is tourism, or how does it rack and stack with some of our industries, and how much of that is in small communities?
Okay. Well, I'm going to, first of all, the fact that people might not see tourism. It's not readily visible. And that is a challenge for the industry nationwide. It's an invisible industry in many places. Even in Cheyenne, we know it when we have events and big things happening in the summer and activities. But there is tourism happening year round. And when you, like here in Cheyenne, if you break ground on a data center. Then there's construction and there's a building going up, and people can actually see something tangible there. A visitor comes in and stays in overnight in some accommodation. They enjoy shopping, they enjoy dinner, they enjoy all of these activities, but they're not identifying themselves as I live here or I'm a visitor. Sometimes through international visitation, we know just because of language and a few other things. But so certainly when you're thinking about the visitor economy, you're not always thinking about like, oh, that person that's walking down the street could be a visitor. I just don't know. And in especially in local communities, Dale, I mean, in smaller communities, the impact of tourism is probably greater overall on that on the local community, maybe more so than it is in well-established communities. I think of Lusk, Wyoming, and Niobrara County, and we often try to help them along because they do have a challenge. You're the least populated county in the least populated state in the nation, and so when you want to grow a visitor economy, you have to have capacity or experiences or things for them to do, and so visitors who are driving up 85, and there are a lot of travelers, non-resident travelers who are here vacationing, who like those off the beaten path roads. That's one of the things that they love about Wyoming. It's one of the things that we all love about Wyoming, right? We like to be on those roads. And so they may be stopping in for a meal or walking in and hitting, even if there's just one or two small shops on Main Street, and they're making an impact and then they're going on. I know probably what was it, 8 or 9 years ago when they had the flood on the Niobrara River, we went up to Lusk because that community said, the road is closed. We're missing these travelers. We miss the people who are driving up and down this road. And many times we don't understand the visitor economy until we don't have it. And so to that point, I just think that it's there and it's happening, but because we're not, stopping everyone as they come into the state at the borders and say, I'm a visitor or I'm a resident, I'm here for vacation, I'm here for business, but travel in its entirety for economic development and chambers. I mean, when you think about what leisure travel is doing, what the Office of Tourism is doing, what Visit Cheyenne does, or even what they're doing in Niobrara County and all the communities across the state, we're also enhancing the image of Wyoming because and you work with recruiters and location scouts and businesses who are looking at Wyoming and your job specifically Cheyenne, but they want livable communities. These businesses want to relocate. They want to know that there's a place that there are activities to enjoy and the great outdoors and accessibility. And so in that lives in the heart of the tourism message is all of these beautiful things that people can see and do. And visitors and residents enjoy the same things. And so in terms of community development, economic development, livable communities, we're working in sync together. And we have, obviously, when it comes down to how you market and sell Wyoming, the tourism marketing is at large. It's big, it's bold, it's out there to reach as many people as budgets and strategy will allow, while also assuring that we're engaging in responsible travel in that messaging. And many times in economic development, it's a much more confidential endeavor and more one-on-one sales. And yet there are many times that communities across the state I know are using assets that are created by either the state office of tourism or their local lodging tax board because it works, it's in sync. We're lifting each other up in that way. And we often say that tourism or vacation is the front door to traditional economic development. And that may be, I mean, they may know about Wyoming because we're spending millions and millions of dollars to create awareness about the state. Um, Certainly, I don't want to take credit, when I mean the tourism industry, we don't take credit for everything that happens across every community because that simply isn't so. But it's when all of us are firing on all cylinders that Wyoming is at its best, and we're all achieving the benefits of this hard work that we're collectively doing.
Yeah, so you probably don't relocate a business somewhere unless you've been there, right? And so
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
think a lot of businesses relocate because they've been to a certain region for some reason and they got a tie there either because they liked the area or they thought they could find workforce there or the geography was interesting to their business. But certainly tourism, I know many times in my career has offered a tie for businesses
Mhm.
for whatever. I remember many, many years ago when I used to have hair and I started as a chamber director in Oklahoma. We had a very large company located in a small community because they came there and went turkey hunting,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
that was their only touch to the community.
Yes.
Uh, right? And because they liked coming there to go turkey hunting, they moved a corporate headquarters there. And I think that's fairly often
Mhm.
happens across the nation, and certainly in Wyoming when they come see beautiful mountains and expansive prairies. That we have a lot of visual eye candy for people
You do.
that,
Yeah.
that come.
And I was
So
just one other thing I was just going to add to that too is, it is research. There's been research done on this. It's founded like even when people vacation in an area, they're like twice as likely to consider the University of Wyoming as a place for their kids to go to school. And so there are just many other things that these, and again, invisible, we might not know it, but these benefits are happening. And so there is obviously the value of driving visitation, but then there are all those secondary impacts that are so important.
So we have a wonderful tourism organization in Cheyenne, Visit Cheyenne, but um, you know, I I did do tourism at one time before I came to Wyoming. One of the things we watched a lot was trends in travel that would give us a clue of what was going to happen. So I'm sure that you guys do that as well. What do you see as we live in a very turbulent political environment? We have tariffs with Canada. I'm sure that's changing the way people travel and the way they think about travel. What are you seeing from that? So that some of our people can say, hey, I might be able to respond to that by doing this. What do you see as some of those trends in the travel industry?
Well, it's certainly it's true. In international inbound into the United States is down. And that's tracked through uh, the Office of Travel and Tourism Industries, which is a division of the U.S. Department of Commerce. Also, Homeland Security, Borders and Customs are tracking inbound along the borders of Canada and Mexico. Canadian travelers, Canada is the largest inbound international market for the U.S. By far, Canada and Mexico. And you have to get international visitors to the United States before we can get them to Wyoming. So,
Sure.
and we're not a port of entry. And so there has been a change in that. What we have experienced in Wyoming this summer has not been a real dip. In fact, the economy is doing really well this summer. You probably just saw the visitation statistics on Yellowstone National Park, Grand Teton National Park. They're up. Uh, Hotel performance is performing on par. Revenue is above where it was. Tax collections are up slightly for this segment, which is important because the leisure and hospitality sector is the second leading contributor of sales and use tax to the state, which matters to communities across Wyoming. So in the moment, we're not seeing the immediate impact of what is happening. But what we are keeping our eye on are, what do advanced reservations look like? What is happening from other um, uh, you know points of measure? So we use a lot of international offices. We are in partnership with other states, and so our in-market reps in Europe are tracking. Are people canceling trips? Are bookings down? Are there changes in that? We've not experienced it yet, but our concern is more on 26 and beyond. If these things do come to fruition, these tariffs and many other things, and also then what's the communication around it? Um, excuse me. Part of this is perception and narrative, but does it translate to a change in behavior? And what we don't want to have happen, which is what you're after, is we don't want to be all of a sudden like, oh my goodness, where is everyone? You want to know in advance to the best of your ability. We're seeing some changes in travel behavior. The fortunate thing for Wyoming is we rely heavily on domestic travel. Only about 10% of our travel is international. I don't want to underscore what that international travel means, because international travelers stay longer, they travel in shoulder seasons, they have a tendency to spend a lot more per trip than domestic travelers. But certainly with the Wyoming product and the Wyoming experience, we have always relied heavily on US travelers coming to the state and spending their dollars here for visitation. And that could very well be why we aren't experiencing those dips and those changes right now. Usually, when it comes to international, it'll hit like Florida, New York, California. Big cities will start to feel it a little bit more. But we have, knock on wood, been able to manage and fare well in national or international tragedies. Even with the pandemic, yes, the visitor economy was down, but we fared better than most. We did not have the same impacts that other states did, and certainly not other communities. And so, for what we're monitoring a variety of things that are coming at the national level, but we also are in really close contact with all of our major partners. So I probably have a conversation with Xanterra every other week, looking at what are advanced bookings for Yellowstone National Park. And the reason why that one is so important, that's the largest lodging complex in the entire state of Wyoming. And it's a destination driver. And so if their bookings are strong, that means that the people traveling to and from the park and going into communities across the state will still be robust. It's not the only thing, but that is one of the things that we're looking at. And as you know, you live in this world too of data. Because we don't have a major airport, we rely on gateway airports to serve the majority of travel in and out of Wyoming. Um, we're considered sometimes statistically insignificant as far as Wyoming goes on like a national scale. And so they group us with maybe we'll be grouped with Montana and Idaho. And so we really have to look at, I equate it to a jigsaw puzzle. You have some of the pieces, you don't have all of the pieces, but if we can get enough of the pieces, it will paint the picture and we can see what the landscape looks like. And so today it is still monitor, listen. We still are in communication with all of our Canadian tour operators, the Canadian media, that we're here when you're ready to travel and ready to engage. We're here and ready for that. There still are a lot of Canadian travelers here, but I definitely know that, there's been a change, especially from talking to our neighboring states that are borders to Canada.
So one of the things you mentioned is kind of interesting. I've shown cattle for years, and I'll run into somebody from Tennessee or Missouri or wherever and say, I've never been to Wyoming.
Yeah.
I went to Yellowstone as a child, but I never went to Wyoming. And I'm like, if you went to Yellowstone, you've probably been to Wyoming,
Yep.
unless you
Yeah.
just hung out in a little corner in Montana. So it's really interesting how people just group those kinds of things. So you mentioned Lusk. So there are little towns like Lusk all
Yeah.
over Wyoming. So give those communities some advice to their chamber person or economic development person, whoever's working on tour has tourism in their portfolio in those communities. What what would you work on if you were the chamber director in one of those communities and you were trying to increase tourism?
So the fundamental tourism 101, make sure that you are maximizing the visitors that you have before you try to drive new visitation. Because if you don't have information for them or an itinerary that may slow them down, and actually having these people stay a little bit longer, having new visitors will be just passed through again. That, the volume, it doesn't matter. It's how do you leverage who is there in that given moment. And many times we think that we should have some kind of like a museum or something that's interactive. When visitors really love meeting with locals, whether it could be, something through storytelling or a walk along the river with some, using maybe some of the audio that you would get from Wyoming Game and Fish for listening for different types of birds. Or, you can package your natural assets in a way that can slow people down for a little bit. This is a 15-minute walk. Enjoy this. These are the unique things along this pathway. The other thing that's really important for small communities, and we call them the triangles, Dale. There are three regions in the state that have these small communities, and working together, not just focusing on I'm not going to do anything outside of my county borders because visitors don't care what county they're in. They quite honestly, when they cross borders, they don't always even recognize that. And so, what's the experience and how can you loop that together? If you took Lusk and then maybe Goshen County and Platte, there's a really great historical circle that visitors can do and engage in. And wherever their starting point would be, they could have these working together to create an itinerary. And that's my number one advice is we think about how do we create these fabulous marketing campaigns and what do we do with even if it's a small amount that you collect in local lodging tax dollars, those dollars can be spent toward developing product and creating itineraries. You don't necessarily have to have a printed piece. You can create something digital. And so really establishing that infrastructure so that you have something for a visitor and or a resident to experience.
It's probably 25 years ago. I had heard a tourism consultant out of Texas, and he had a really strong message that I've always remembered is that there are magical stories in every little corner of America.
Mhm.
But the people we need to know those stories the most don't know them. And not everybody's going to come to the chamber or the local visitors bureau, but they all stop at a quick stop and use the potty and grab a sack of chips
Mhm.
and get gas, right? And so his argument was, we should really make an effort to educate our local frontline workers about what their community is and not and let them have a good feeling about it. Because when they say, well, there's nothing to do here, go to Billings or go wherever,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That really is a loss for us. So
Yes.
how do you see these organizations across Wyoming dealing with that kind of thing about educating the folks in their community? Do you have a model that you can point to say they really do a good job and we should look at that, or does the state offer some resources to that, or
Well, this is an easy one because the answer is
okay?
yes, yes, and yes.
Oh,
Um,
yay!
yeah, really good news, right?
Yeah,
There's a program the Wyoming Office of Tourism offers specifically for frontline for visitor, like learning about the state. And it is a program that is modeled after one that was developed by the U.S. Travel Association for Welcome Center staff. And so all of our visitor center employees that the state, for visitor centers that we operate, must go through that. Most local communities have some level of using it for their own visitor information center folks. But then the training for frontline, there's been programs that are established in Rock Springs and Cheyenne and Casper. It's the same kind of a model based on a national model that they do for training. Really, a lot of this started with the eclipse in 2017, and
yeah,
Casper launched this training program to make sure, because they knew there would be a lot of people, and we wanted to maximize the experience of when these people were here in Wyoming. And so there are those community training programs, but probably one of the most maybe least recognized because it's relatively new is through the University of Wyoming and the Institute. The J. and Karen Kimmer Worth Institute at the University of Wyoming is an institute that focuses on Wyoming's recreation, tourism, and hospitality industries. So students can get, it's obviously first and foremost a degree program for, developing a qualified workforce to work in this industry. But they also have a series of services that they offer. And one is training and training frontline employees. And it's at a minimal cost. Dan McCoy at the university, I'll be sure to get you the link for that. So if you want to post it with this podcast, you can. But
okay.
highly suggest that communities would leverage that opportunity with our own University of Wyoming. We work closely with the Worth Institute, as does the Wyoming Hospitality and Travel Coalition, and just really developing some good programs there. And I think one of the ones that has been extremely successful is their frontline training program. And they'll go into businesses and or do it for a community too. So it serves both.
Right. Well, tourism has been so important in Wyoming and plays such a vital role to our economy. And it's great because we don't have to educate their kids or flush their toilets or anything like that. And as you talk to the legislature and look at the financial outlook for Wyoming, certainly that is just wonderful extra money for us as Wyomingites to enjoy. So we try not to keep these too long, but I want, before you get out of here, I do want to ask you about what do you see coming for tourism in the next few years? So Wyoming needs to continue to grow this industry. How do we make sure that we're on the cutting edge of what you see coming from trends across the nation and around the world?
Well, I think our industry is no different than any other industry. We need to develop emerging leaders. There's obviously I am interacting with people across the state. I think we're ripe for that, but how do we continue to provide upward opportunities for them and increase the value of working in this industry? Because as someone who is on the other end, I'm not just entering this, but I've had a career that has been fulfilling, challenging, rewarding, all of those things in this industry. So one of those is continue to add depth to our bench of leaders and people who understand what this economy means. The emerging technologies happen so quickly, and it's changing everything in how people book rooms or how we tell our stories. And I think having the appropriately trained staff teams, not only from the Office of Tourism and our team, but in local communities and local businesses too. I think that's probably in the world of economic development and how you're looking at this world. Technology is really driving so much of the process of business. And this industry is not alone in that. The other thing that we will continue to will be a challenge and an opportunity. I see all of these as challenges and opportunities, but is that to continue to educate and help the grassroots folks across the state understand the value of this industry with providing actually local support and businesses. And And when people travel, they want to feel good. A lot of times people travel for altruistic things. They want to feel like they've contributed to a good cause. And we're like, you don't understand. You have to know that what you're doing in these small communities by stopping and having lunch is an economic contribution to that community. And so, we want to continue to educate travelers so that they know that these small towns are relying on the visitation. Those will continue to be, that's an evergreen issue, is just championing the value of the visitor economy and that it isn't just they will come. This has a very strategic operation behind it. I mean, we deploy campaigns and stories with strategic precision, and that will continue to be, I think, our biggest challenges. But I also think that we are prime and ready to address them because it's a very collaborative industry. Chambers are so important to this economic development. Businesses all across every industry sector are important to Wyoming. And we want to continue to be one of the leading contributing industries for the robust economy of Wyoming and all the local communities. One thing I just want to add to, Dale, you know this, but this industry is the largest private sector employer in the state. This is a people industry. It's not easily resourced out for technology and other things. And so developing the workforce and continuing to grow that is really important. And also to break down the misperception that these are just entry-level jobs. And every industry has entry-level jobs. But in this industry, also, there are C-suites and researchers and accountants and operations managers and, a variety of other career paths that are fitted well within the tourism, leisure, and hospitality industries. And so our opportunity is there. Just like with anything, you've got a challenge if you work it hard. You can, turn it into something that can be really beneficial for all of us, which is what we're collectively working to do every day.
Well, Diane, we are deeply grateful for your commitment to this industry across the state and your work and life's work, right? And you
Yeah.
for years, life's work and life's passion to give back and increase the economic development industry of tourism across the state. So thank you very much for that. And thank you for spending a few minutes of your time with us today and talking to folks around the state about tourism, how important it is to their community, and what it can mean to their future.
Thank you
Have
for
a,
having me.
have a
It
great
means a
day.
lot. Thank you so much.